And I think that is the cultural shift that I'm looking at. So I think the question about the role of IIT is partly answered by specific technological changes, and that always remains important. But over and above that, there is a general issue about getting things done, which is a matter of culture, not resting by saying, look, I did my best. That is essentially the Niti argument. I did my best, don't fault me. It didn't work out. Well, that's not an adequate answer. And I think in engineering that has always been known. It's true of even Indian classical engineering. Quite often it's quite remarkable how good they were. When I was a child in Shantiniketan, to which one referred, I was struck by the fact that when there was the Damodar Valley flood, the only bridge that survived was one constructed by Sher Shah, and all the ones constructed by the British modern technology had perished. So I think there had been some interest and attention, but along with loss of self-confidence, loss of technical knowledge, increasing dependence, which we are getting rid of now, there came a kind of abdication of insistence on things that do get done no matter what it needs. I think that is a very central question that has to be answered. Now, as I said, I don't want to give a very long speech. What are India's problems today? I already referred to hunger, illiteracy, lack of medical care. How do we deal with them? Well, one of them, of course, they need much more money, and this is something which I've been battling on for over 45 years now, going back to the time in the early 60s when I was teaching in the Delhi School of Economics. And I think that point has become more accepted now. In fact, my only critique when liberalization first came in the early 90s, my only reluctance wasn't because I didn't want liberalization, but I did not want liberalization unaccompanied by positive actions by the state, dealing with more schools, more hospitals, all the other basic deficient and nutritional intervention that we need, and reform, and so on. So I think we needed less activity of the state in some fields and more activity in others. But even more importantly, what we need is that these things achieve the result intended. Now I think we are in a position where the allocation have actually expanded. If I was slightly skeptical of my friend Manmohan Singh's first program in 1991, he didn't agree with my critique, I might say. And recently I saw an interview he was giving to a Cornell journalist explaining that I was criticizing him unfairly. And he may be right, I don't know. But certainly by the time he came back as the Prime Minister, from his very first speech, there was a question of greater allocation on these matters. The important thing, if I may, and this is why I read the first bit, because I'm straying, but I have to stray a bit right now because it's very tempting that since there's a global slowdown, how it will affect India. The fact of the matter is that I think there's something that's not fully understood, is this, that the main way that growth helps the poor is not so much the income that it goes directly. It does go to some, but to a great extent, given the nature of our growth, it goes mostly to richer people, relatively, who worry about petrol prices, who worry about India's sovereignty and so on, as I was giving examples, rather than their next meal, rather than a treatment for their ailing child, rather than the utterly undernourished daughter they happen to have. The way it changes is this, that given the fact that the expansion concentrates on modern sectors which are more taxable. If the Indian economy goes at 6, 7, 8, 9%, this can be empirically verified, and I presented a paper on that in Financial Times last year. If the Indian overall growth is 6, 7, 8, 9%, the growth of public revenue is 9, 10, 11, 12%. It grows much faster. And that, of course, opens up resources to be spent. In fact, up to the last year, the government of India has more freedom to spend money on public projects than they have ever had anything like that in the past. Now, the danger, on the other hand, of the slowdown is the opposite is also true. As it goes down from 9, 8, 7 to 6 or 5%, then the public revenue jumps down from 12, 11, 10, 9 to 8%. So that's where the real thing to watch is in the world, and applies particularly to India. Now, we haven't seen yet the worst of the crisis. I think this year the growth rate, the government expects 7. They may get it. The chances are probably slightly less. Next year will be probably quite a bit less. I think what we have to do is to guard the public revenue, because their priority is so important to deal with basic problems. India had not only highest absolute number of hungry children, we have a higher proportion of hungry children, all of South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh put together, and Nepal, that we have a higher proportion of hungry children, undernourished children, than even Africa has, which is quite a remarkable failure. Our illiteracy rate is still quite high. When I was lucky to get the Nobel, I used the money to set up 2 trusts, one in India and one in Bangladesh, named after my house called Pratichi Trust. And the Pratichi, thank you. The Pratichi Trust, I shouldn't get any credit. The amount of pleasure I get from working there could not have been, actually a friend of mine who got the Nobel, I asked him what he did. He said he bought a castle in Switzerland. And I said, do you go there? He said, no, but it's, from time to time I do. Now, I must say, I can recommend you, when you get the Nobel Prize, that doing something which you enjoy doing is enormously better than getting a castle. Absolutely. So I get a lot of pleasure, but also we learn a lot. I think the neglect of basic education is extraordinary. But it's not just a financial neglect. The huge deficiency in accountability and organization has become the biggest bottleneck now.